To make a butt seal between two tubes of equal diameter, stopper one end of one of the tubes to be joined and attach a blowing hose to one end of the other length of tube. Preheat the ends to be joined. Then place the edges directly in the fire. Rotate the tubes continuously throughout the sealing operation and maintain them in axial alignment. When the tubes are red hot, touch the molten edges together without pressure so that the edges fuse and flow naturally. Then lift them out of the flame. While maintaining rotation, stretch the molten area about 10%, at the same time blowing the seal to the full diameter of the tubing. Maintain just enough tension on the ends to keep the tube straight. To make a butt seal between tubes of unequal diameter, merely flare an end of the smaller tube to the diameter of the inner wall of the larger tube, and thereafter proceed as in the case of tubes of equal diameter. Follow the same procedure for butt sealing capillary tubing. To flare capillary tubes, first soften and thus close an end of the capillary. Pick off part of the softened glass with a pair of tweezers. Reheat the end. Blow a small bubble. Cool and break off the bubble. Heat the jagged edge and butt seal it to the second length of tubing. To make a T-seal, firmly clamp the horizontal tube to a stationary apparatus. One end of the tube is corked, and to the other end a blow hose is attached. Next, the point at which the vertical tube is to be sealed is softened, and a bubble is blown. The bubble is then broken off. The vertical tube is stoppered at the top end. Both the bubble opening and the end of the vertical tube are softened for the seal. Rotate the flame around the glass. Continued heating permits the point to thicken. Then the vertical piece is lifted slightly, while air is blown to smooth out the seal internally and restore the diameter of the tubing. It should be noted in making any seal that once the seal is set, the piece should be reheated to anneal the glass. To seal one tube coaxially inside another tube, the smaller tube is first flared for a snug fit to the inside diameter of the larger tube. The smaller tube is rolled in asbestos to the diameter of its flare. The asbestos will keep the smaller tube level and prevent its weight at the flare point from distorting the wall of the larger tube where the seal is to be made. As the work is rotated in the flame at the point of seal, heat of the larger tube is transmitted to the flare of the smaller tube so that the two flow together. We now proceed to make a triple seal by heating the outer tube just beyond the point of the ring seal, and when the outer tube is molten, it is peeled off into a tapered end. The tapered end is then blown into a hemisphere. A hole is then blown in the center of the hemisphere. To this opening, you may seal any tube of matching diameter, or tubes of other sizes that have been flared or constricted to matching diameter. Electrodes may be installed in glass apparatus of all kinds, including lasers, by the technique of butt sealing. This operation requires that the fire be brought to the tube ends to be sealed and evenly rotated around the glass. Also, you must use a holder for supporting and manipulating the short electrode. Observe that the electrode tube is lifted slightly for straightening the glass and blown to full diameter as when making an ordinary butt. Finally, the leads of the electrode are straightened. A butt seal can be made without the use of air pressure. A seal in the form of a Y or a T can be made by picking a hole in the glass. First, the point at which the opening is desired is strongly heated by the needle flame of a hand torch. The softened glass is picked up by the end of a heated glass rod. The small resulting cone of glass is broken off with a file. The resulting hole can then be enlarged to the desired diameter using a flaring tool or the tang of an ordinary file. A conventional seal is then made to the open tube. Care must be taken not to over-constrict the work, since it cannot be blown out to the original internal diameters of the joined tubes. Instead of being blown, the second tube is lifted just enough to reduce constriction and align the pieces as desired. You can affix a bypass of smaller tubing to larger tube that's rigidly held in the horizontal position. One end of the large tube is corked, and to the other end a blowhose is attached. Two T-seals of the smaller diameter tubing are made in the large tube, where the legs of the smaller tube are to be joined. One of the T-seals and the corresponding leg of the bypass tube have been corked. The open ends of the bypass tube and its T-seal are joined in the conventional manner. When the T and its matching tube have flowed together, the fused leg of the bypass is lifted slightly and blown to restore the diameter. Having completed the first butt seal between one end of the bypass tubing and the leg of the T, remove the corks as the glass stiffens and simultaneously bend the free end bypass down into contact with the second T extension. Work promptly but deliberately so that the bypass will remain plastic enough for the second seal. Make the second butt seal by the technique used for sealing rigid tubing. Constrictions can be made to reduce the interior diameter of glass tubes. To make a constriction without thinning the walls of the tube, a local area of tube is heated and first pressed gently together and then pulled gently apart, estimating wall thickness by eye. By pulling more on the ends of the tube, a constriction with thinner walls is achieved. Estimate by eye again. By pressing toward the center only, the walls tend to thicken, and a constriction of thicker wall results. Another way to make a constriction is to make a dimple. The tube is stoppered at one end, blowhose attached to the other. The tube is clamped into place, and the point at which the dimple is to appear is marked with chalk. When the needle point flame has heated the marked spot sufficiently, air is sucked, collapsing the wall to the desired degree of constriction as estimated by eye. A simple example of constriction is seen in the eyedropper. Learning to make seals and constrictions takes the beginner a big step forward in the mastery of glassworking, and seals and constrictions can be recognized in a wide variety of laboratory and novelty glasswork. Perhaps there is no aspect of glassworking that is as creatively satisfying as actually blowing glass in all manner of forms and shapes. And that is how glass snow for Christmas decoration was once blown commercially. But to more serious business. The walls of a capillary tube can be thinned and flared by blowing. Once one end of a capillary tube has been rotated to plastic softness, the soft end should be crimped and pulled off to close the tube. A seed bulb is blown to start the thinning. The seed bulb is broken with a file and the tube end reheated. A glass rod may be touched to the soft capillary end to close it, so that the tube may be blown again for a larger bubble and thinner walls. Finally, the tube end is rounded and annealed by being returned to the flame once more. For most glass blowing, pulling a point is the necessary first step. Notice that the hair-thin pulled points are not broken off, but flame cut, thus sealing off air from the point body. One end of the point is opened. Straightened as necessary for axial alignment before blowing. As the sphere is blown, the hands hold the point ends still and steady. Once a tube has replaced one of the points, the sphere serves as the basic shape for making a thistle tube. The opposite end of the point is pulled off. A small bubble then blown, and the bubble is broken to permit the introduction of a flaring tool to shape the thistle lip. To blow an oblate sphere, the point ends are pushed slightly together as air is blown. For an ellipsoid, the point ends are pulled slightly as air is blown. For an ellipsoid Christmas ornament, color is stitched to the point body from a softened colored rod end over the flame. The tiny globulates of molten colored material spread into lines as the point body is rotated in the fire. Now an ellipsoid is partially blown and the point ends twisted slightly to begin a swirl of colored lines. The ellipsoid is further heated before the full ellipsoid is blown and twisted further to complete the body of a colorful object. To blow an end bulb, one point end is removed and the resulting scar absorbed into the body end by rotation over the flame. To prevent the body from collapsing, air is puffed into it as it is prepared for actual bulb end blowing. A bulb may be made without blowing from air trapped in the body of a point. One end of the point is removed and the body joined to a preheated rod end here. Holding the rod and rotating the body at the other point join, the second end is pulled off. Now air is trapped in the body of the point, and the body is rotated evenly and all around in the flame. Since air expands under heat, a bulb is soon formed as the air presses outward. When a glass rod end has been melted plastic enough and brought into contact with a bulb, by blowing through the bulb, air can be forced into the rod, resulting in a bulb from the rod itself. When sealing a rod to a bulb, always blow a dimple through the bulb into the end of the rod. The thickness of the rod is thereby tapered to the thickness of the bulb, resulting in a strong joint. Bulbs can be blown from glass rod with the use of a blowpipe. A small amount of glass is rolled onto the end of an iron blower's pipe. A tiny seed bubble is blown to prevent the glass from backing up into the pipe. The seed bulb is returned to the fire and more mass is added. When the mass has been evenly heated in rotation in the flame, the pipe is blown in earnest and a bulb results. This technique is especially useful for converting solid rod into hollow parts for laboratory apparatus and for creating decorative forms from scraps of colored glass. Finally, the mastery of carnival artistry provides pleasure and good practice for glassworking skill. The creation of a glass-blown swan involves many disciplines, making a point, blowing, bending, constricting, and sealing or joining. It is an exercise that earns both the scientist and the hobbyist compliments from colleagues, friends, or family members who only sit and wait. Glass bulbs are among the most useful vessels known to man. Without them, we could have no wonder drugs. The telephone would fall silent, as would the radio, motion picture, and TV tubes. Bulbs of glass guide jetliners through the sky, help man to plumb the depths of space, light his dwelling and his way. Why blow these shimmering bubbles? They contain the seed of miracles.